Good overnight, and welcome on in to another episode of From Day One, the overnight edition. Art Bell is ready with tonight's guest, Jim Sparks, and it's all about the aliens. Let's begin.
Want to take a ride? From the high desert and the great American Southwest, exclusively on Sirius XM Radio, this is Dark Matter with your host, Art Bell. Now, here's our
extraterrestrial radio. Actually, hi everybody, how you doing? It's going to be a great night, as long as we can make connection with Australia. And if we can't, then I'm going to play with Skype. Because guess what? I got Skype working just perfectly. Actually, Paul and I did. Producer Paul. Cool dude. And now we've got audio going into Skype as well as out. And what that means is when you talk, you're talking on the air when you connect with me on Skype, and you'll be able to hear everything happening on this end. In other words, if I've got a guest on, you'll hear the guest. If I'm the one here, I'm doing open lines or something like that, you'll hear me. Now, Skype is being reserved for people outside of the United States and Canada. At least at this point. Now, I may use it as a special line at some point, and then I'll open it up for everybody. But this will give people, somewhere else in the world a chance to get through. You guys, when the lines are open, they're all going. Blinkety blink blink, all going. Nobody could get through. So, especially if you're dialing from, I don't know, Schmaltzvania, somewhere in there. Really hard to get through. That's the deal. If you want to call on Skype and you're outside the United States, I'm willing to take your call virtually right now. It'd be cool to get a call from Britain or Japan or Australia or anywhere, I guess, in the world. I know my Aussie friend probably will call. Now, here's the deal. My name on Skype is Art. Remember the dot. Art.Bell, B-E-L-L. And that's it. 51. Got that. 51. Art.Bell 51. And then you call me on Skype. You can even do it from handheld phones. And it'll probably sound better than, cell phone lines. So if you're outside the country somewhere and you want to call, start now. All right, there was an earthquake in the Philippines last night when we were on there. It was rough. Very rough. 7.2 or 4, whatever, depending on whose scale you're looking at. It was in Bohol, Cebu area, and there was a lot of damage. A lot of old churches went down in this earthquake, and it was close to my wife's family, but they're okay. I mean, relatively close, if you look at the Philippines. Almost moved to Cebu, so I sit here wondering if I had done that, whether my house would be down all around me right now. Those poor people. And poor us, too. Our government is shut down. They're threatening now not to pay the money we owe to the people we owe it to, the Chinese and others, and that'd be really bad news for the Chinese and us and a lot of other people, and it actually would be a financial disaster. Don't raise the debt ceiling. Default is what it's called, and it's horrible. Horrible. Getting awful damn close now. They're really playing with fire over there. Playing with fire, I think. I don't know how many of you are CNN people, but I just happened to be watching today as Jake Tapper was coming on, giving credit where it's due. He started his program and he said, you remember that, well, referring to the day before when, they had a deal. You remember that when they had a deal? Jake Tapper said, you remember that light we all yesterday saw at the end of the tunnel? Well, it looks like we're all standing on the tracks. Man, that was funny. What a way to open your show. Remember that light we all saw yesterday at the end of the tunnel? Looks like we're all standing on the tracks. Very good. Every now and then there's a gem, huh? All right. Now I'm going to give you reasons to go to artbell.com right now. Artbell.com. And here they are. Number one, we have got a video up there. It's truth or trash time, but oh God, this is a good video. It really is. It's of a poor man about to be hit by a truck, but saved by an alien. This thing will rock your world. Now, let me instruct you before you go, or maybe you're already on the way. When you get to it, you start watching it. Please stick with it. It repeats many times, and normally I don't go for the repeats. When you've seen it, right? But here, you, as a slow it down, you're going to be able to see the most amazing thing you've ever seen, because the video otherwise is very fast, too fast to see. So stick with it. That's one reason to go to artbell.com. Another is, I think, pretty sure we've got the new video. Do you remember the old deal when you'd fold the $20 bill just the right way? And you'd see all kinds of things, right? Well, now the new $100 bill is out, and the folders of the world have already figured it out. So I think we've got that video up there for you to see. It starts out with the $20 bill, but then it moves on to the brand new $100 bill. Oh my God, the stories it tells. Straight to the camps we go. So, and the store, Arts Parts, we've got a store up there. A lot of people getting Arts Parts. That sounds a little, I don't know. You want one of Arts Parts? That's a coffee mug or a t-shirt, or actually the store is expanding and there's new stuff up there. So if you want to get something, go on up there. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool indeed. So let me see, where are we? We've got a really good show coming up tonight. Jim Sparks. Jim, right? A lot of you don't, actually. And we're going to retell some of Jim's story because, and some of the longtime listeners have got to understand this. There are 27 million subscribers to SiriusXM. Not just those of you who have come over here from my show. But altogether, that's a lot of people, and a lot of people have never heard the show. So we're going to retell his story, and plus, and add more to it. Now, speaking of shows, by the way, tomorrow night, we are going to have on Tobias McGriff. And I want you to stay tuned for that one. I mentioned Tobias because, well, here's the thing, folks. Here's the thing. He's going to be a great guest. But, we just noticed that Tobias McGriff suddenly got booked on the other show for tonight. Tonight! What's up with that? And we thought, well, it might have been just some horrible scheduling mistake, right? Some terrible misreading of each other's schedules or something like that. And I can understand, folks, if you want to go and listen to Tobias tonight over there, nothing we can do about it. In fact, actually, we've sort of delved into it a little bit and looked into it a little bit because it seems so awkward. So very, very awkward. And, it turns out it's the doggonedest thing. Apparently there are coincidences because Tobias, he got scheduled the very day after we posted our schedule. I think we posted on Friday. Pretty sure we. And the very next day, Tobias got scheduled. Just incredible, huh? Actually, tacky. Yeah, but, again, I understand if you want to, go over and hear Tobias there instead of here tomorrow. Oh, but before you do that, I spoke to Tobias on the phone this evening, and you know what? He said, hey, Art, I'm really looking forward to being on the air with you tomorrow night, and I'm going to hold all the good stuff for your show. I'm quoting Tobias exactly here. He's holding all the good stuff for our show. Yeah, if you want to hear the other stuff, well, fine. You want the good stuff, you'll be over here tomorrow. Oh, and then there's one last thing, and just one last thing. It's been a hard day for me. I mean, on top of this Tobias thing, it's not one thing, it's another, right? I received an email. Somebody told me that, you know how George always mentions my name at the end of the show, right? He didn't do it last night. God, it rocked my world. And I didn't know what to think. Dropping my name? Well, anyway, if he doesn't immediately restore the ritual naming of me at the end of that show, I'm going to begin thanking George at the end of each one of my shows for making dark matter absolutely. This is Dark Matter, ladies and gentlemen, in the nighttime. Jim Sparks will be coming. Oh, no, wait a moment. Wait just a moment. I've got an idea. This isn't appropriate. It's a wonderful song. Actually, you know, that's the #1 song in the entire world. In every survey ever done by anybody, it's #1. And I'm going to play it all the way through one night. I really am. Now, this is better. Raging through the nighttime with Jim Sparks all the way from Australia. This is Dark Matter. I know you deceive me, now here's a surprise. Okay, it's been a long time. Jim Sparks, a professional in the human abduction scenario. Think of that line. Jim Sparks is a professional abductee. He's a lecturer and author of the most popular book, The Keepers. He was raised in South Florida, educated in business. His abductions actually began in '88, and I've done a number of interviews with him. He is riveting. At that time, he was living in Houston, working as a successful land developer. You know, he was good. He didn't have to become an abductee. Initially an unwilling abductee, in fact, his experiences transformed once he was able to put aside the rage, and there'd be a lot of that, right, if you were abducted. And he overcame his fear. He began to understand he was encountering highly intelligent, advanced beings from other worlds. Jim had been completely conscious of his face-to-face experiences. Lucky for us. Well, he wouldn't be able to tell us about them, right? Giving him clear memories, amazing insight. In the last 2 decades that he's been dealing with ETs, he's witnessed amazing sciences. He knows there's a plan to elevate ourselves to better understand what these beings are about, so we all might evolve. Today he realizes all of us, including him, are not alone. Many others have gone through similar experiences. Whether fortunate or unfortunate, he differs from most abductees in that he has total recall of his experiences with these beings from other regions and dimensions of time and space. His goal is to explain the agenda of these beings and the message they bring to humanity. Jim is coming to us all the way from Australia, we hope. Jim, welcome to the program if you're there.
Hey, Art, it's great to be here.
Wow, not a half-bad connection.
No, not too bad at all from the distance, huh?
Where are you in Australia?
I'm Southside Perth.
Oh, so that puts you wonder how many miles. I bet about 10,000 miles away from me.
Yeah, anywhere from 7 to 10,000, depending on where you're at in the States. Sure. Long boat.
Well, I think it's more than 7,000 because it's like 7,700 or something like that to the Philippines, and you got to keep going to get to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. You know what? You probably didn't hear it in the beginning of the show, Jim, but we're on Sirius XM now. Now, Sirius XM has like 27 million subscribers. So a whole bunch of loyal people have come over, who are my listeners, Jim. But then we've got these like 27 million people, many of whom are hearing this show for the first time, and they never heard you and they never heard your story. So, we're going to have to start from the beginning if we can.
Yeah, sure. That'd be fine.
All right, so before 1988, you were just in business, a family guy. You were not a ufologist. You weren't following UFOs. You weren't even interested, right?
Yeah, I had no interest in the subject whatsoever. None whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Except, like anybody else would. I mean, the UFO I thought was possible. And, I never thought there were occupants, and I didn't give it a lot of thought at that time at all. So,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, so take me, if you would please, to the first thing that happened to you. I mean, how it began.
Well, what attributes them to be so difficult to understand. And when the beginning, which is important that we go to the beginning, definitely in the early stages, because it makes more sense as we go along. And,
okay.
But there's something about them. There's something about the human condition that I would just like to go over with first, before we get into the beginning stages of what would happen, that make it so difficult for us to understand them and to be what they are. And so some of these things that I'll go over, you can probably see why it's that way.
Okay.
When you think about it, we're 90%, better than 90% of my interaction has been with what are commonly referred to as grays. And I've got, nearly 100%, if not 100% total recall, as you mentioned earlier. All the experiences have been face to face. But just a summary of why they're so, in a sense, non-approachable. And so if you see this picture, for starters, they're 100% telepathic. And I've never seen one.
I'm going to, I'm going to stop you right away, Jim, and I'm going to say, just on the off chance, there are not people on our channel, 104, that know what a gray is. Would you describe for my audience as best as you can a gray?
Sure. It's a species, it's a non-human intelligent living being from another world. Where it may be, I can't be certain, but there's a species known as grays. And there's two types. There's the ones that are about 3.5 feet tall. And these are really worker beings. And these are the ones that most abductees talk about. They have very large heads, teardrop-shaped head, with the huge eyes, the stuff you see a lot on television, with, the no nose and the thin mouth, and they're very short. And the reason I say they're worker beings, because in 12 years of these experiences and interactions I've had, you find out that they're part robotic, and I believe them to be part biological. And those are usually reported to be as the aliens. But over time, I've learned they just work for the quote-unquote grays. The grays are humanoid in a sense in a way, but they're not human at all. Now, these are the ones we're talking to specifically. And
okay, and they're called grays because they are in fact gray color, right?
They look gray to me most of the time. I've never seen any other color but that color, a grayish, a light grayish color. So that's why I would refer to them as grays. And
would you, Jim? Would you call it skin, or does it have a different texture than human skin? Do you know?
I would say it looks thicker. Well, it looks thicker than human skin, okay. And it is grayish in color, almost sandy-like looking in a sense, the texture of it.
All right. So these are the beings, these smaller gray ones that initially your initial contact was with.
Yeah, the smaller ones are the ones that usually come in and escort you or take you, but they go back to what a gray is. Their heads are bigger than normal. Their eyes are bigger than normal, but they're not as big as the giant teardrop eyes that, people see, commonly referred to as, aliens. They have the fin, they have two holes for a nose and, very thin lips. And they're usually no taller than 4 feet, sometimes a little taller, maybe 4.5 at the most. And as I was saying, they're 100% telepathic. And so they never speak. And this is what makes it difficult. So going into that, they have a tremendous amount of technology. They're leaps and bounds ahead of us. They can be invisible. That's another thing they can do. They can create a field where there's invisibility. They have the ability to work in one dimension, have their working essence in one dimension, and part of their working essence here and themselves in another dimension. So occupying the same space and time, and all of that is science. They can pass through solid matter. This is all technology. This is all science. All their technology is primarily thought activated. So what they think operates the technology, the machinery, whatever it may be. And,
well, Jim, after you described them that way, when you first described them, I thought, hey, why not just haul back, make a fist and knock one of these things clean across the room, because they're little. They're 4 feet. I mean, so have at them. But the way you described them and what they can do, has not happened.
Well, as we go into the story, there'll be a part of it where, because, in the early years I was very obstinate, and, it was a trauma at first, negative at first, and then it developed something where actually I thought about doing just that, and I'll go over to it. So it's an interesting story, and I think you'll like it. Sure you will. And not to mention, they can travel time. Now, I'm just going to this part right here. And up to this point, you can kind of see why it's kind of difficult to say, hi, let's sit around and have a cup of coffee. We're telepathic. We can do this. We can work in dimensions. We got thought-activated technology. And then, you have beings that can think 10 to 100 times faster than we do. And they have to slow way, way, way down just to communicate with us. And I think another thing that's makes it very difficult to be around them, and why it takes time to know what they are. And that's what, we'll be talking about, is the fact that when they communicate with you, they communicate to your real self, not our facade self. And this is what I mean by a facade self. When you're out in the street, or you're out in the city and you're out around strangers, nobody knows who you are. And when you're communicating with people, you're talking to the shell of you, because you can't let them inside, because that's the way we operate. And with them, they can't see that. So it means no privacy. So when they communicate with you, they go right to the root of who you are, right to the core.
I'm sure that's got to be so unnerving, completely unnerving for you. For somebody to be, it's bad enough somebody can read your facial expressions and your movements and your body language, but oh my God, if they could read your mind directly, you don't have all.
Oh man. You got it. You got it on the head. And it's terrible because, in the beginning it is, but you're going to learn how their culture is as I speak, because there's absolutely no privacy. Anything you've ever done in your life is on the table. Anything. Some little thing you done as a child, something maybe you're not proud of, or things that you're happy about are right there. You can't hide them. And I thought it was the most, again, horrific thing. And it's a good time to learn the fact that culture is like that, or that species is like that, and nobody cares. Because you know me, I know you. You can't hide nothing from me. I can't hide anything from you, and nobody's hurting each other in that case.
If the gray was sitting there smiling at you after reading your mind, kind of like, man, I know what you did last summer.
Yeah, and I know what you did.
Holy moly!
That's
all right.
Yeah. So these in the beginning, these are the things that I was confronted with, and so how do you get through all these things? They can't come and say hi again. Let's have a cup of coffee and let me tell you what I am. That's why they're so separate, but yet they can be so close. And so And anyway, that's what led to 1988, and as we're saying that, to rehash what, so we know what's going on and how it happened. And for me, I was just as you mentioned earlier, I'm a businessman, and I was taking care of business that occupied all my time. It wasn't anything I was interested in until it started off until one evening. It started off as a dream. For me, it was just a dream. And it became a reoccurring dream, and it was the same dream.
That's kind of worrisome, Jim. If it was a reoccurring dream, I sometimes have reoccurring dreams, and other people do too. They're not exactly normal, but now you've scared me, because if I began having a reoccurring dream about this after hearing you, I don't know.
Well, it started, to me, I thought it was a dream, and it wasn't a dream. And it led into the abduction scenarios, and everything has been face-to-face and, in the flesh, where it's not dream-like at all. But in the beginning, they were gentle with me. And one thing, that I've learned over the years is you got to get over your fears. You're going to be afraid. There's no doubt about it, because it's so different. But you always keep in your mind they're not going to kill you. They're not going to hurt you. And that's the stand I always took, because I always came back in one piece fine. Except I was traumatized in those early years, and it went the same way in the beginning. In the first few weeks or months, it was a dream that something was coming into my bedroom, or something or some things, and they were escorting me out of my bed. I didn't see him at first, down the hallway and into the guest room, and then we would walk across the guest room and walk right through the window.
All right. Now, you were at what age at this point, Jim?
I was in my early 30s.
In your early 30s. All right.
Yeah, at that time, yeah.
So were you married?
Yes, I was.
All right, then I presume, I don't want to try, but I presume you were sleeping next to your wife, eh?
Yeah, and that's the thing about abductions, is that they make sure the person or persons that are around you are out cold. They never know you're taken. So that's just what they do. But, yeah. So they're good. They're good at the science. But, walking through the window was terrible to me. It traumatized me in the dream, or it scared me in this dream, and it kept happening several times until one day it wasn't a dream anymore. I was completely 100% conscious, and they did come into the room, and I did see two worker beings. At the time, I didn't know they were worker beings, and they did escort me through the hallway. And I did walk into the guest bedroom, and here's a ground floor window, and you can't walk through a window. There's a screen, there's glass, there's whatever. It's matter, solid matter. And, at the time I didn't know they could create a field that the laws of physics don't apply because of the sciences they have, and I walked through it. And then,
well, I'm sure you were absolutely terrified, Jim. In other words, they were escorting you. That's bad enough. You've got these alien beings escorting you, and now they escort you through a window. If I can ask, what does it feel like to walk through a window or something solid?
You just keep going. It's just like a natural thing. It's like it's a mist, like it's not even there. And then next thing you know, you're outside. And here's what made it really disturbing to me, because again, this is paranormal. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know they were aliens at the time. I didn't know what these things were. I didn't care what they were at that stage. And so now I'm on the other side. When they took me back, my lawn was manicured real low. And we had these flowers on the lawn. They were little honeysuckle flowers that would stick to the bottom of your feet. And when if you walked on the lawn, they would stick to your feet. Anyway, as we would come back, they were on the bottom of my feet. What happened was, they put me back in bed. I'd get up in the morning and I'd be frightened to death, and I was scared. It was different. I didn't know what was going on. And, I went into the guest bedroom. And then right there, made things even worse, was I could see my foot. I went to the window. I could see my footprints in the lawn from the dew in the morning. And then the flowers, my half of heel was on one side of the window outside, and the ball of my feet was embedded in the carpet with the flowers stuck to them, and my footprints were coming through the room with the honeysuckle flowers on them. So obviously there's a window there. There's a glass plate. So that's, bizarre. So it shook me up. And I tried to keep that to myself as much as possible. I mentioned it to my wife. I was going back to work and doing business, but it was disturbing to me naturally. And then something else happened, which changed the whole face of things even stronger.
All right. Just 1 second. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. I'm really sorry to interrupt, but you say you mentioned it to your wife, Jim, and I would like to, if I could, understand how that conversation went. Honey, listen, last night while you were sleeping, I was removed by aliens when walking through the window, solid objects, and so forth and so on. In other words, as you explained all of this to your wife, I really do want to know how she reacted.
She couldn't relate to anything I was saying. She denied it all. She couldn't grasp it. And I was kind of in an awkward state because I was shocked by it. So that she wasn't relating at all to that situation. So that made it even harder. And so it could be like you imagine. But I was persistent because I'm known to be logical and straightforward and a factual type person. And so when I talk about things to people, whether it be relatives, friends, whatever, in business, whatever, they trust me, whatever I'm saying is what's happened. And so here I am talking about this weird stuff. I didn't even know what was going on at the time in the early stages. So what's that? And, then there was another way that's called the easy way, where they escort you to a craft to do what they're going to do. And then there's another way called the hard way, which is even more traumatizing, and which is if a craft is on the ground, they escort you to it the way I just described. If a craft is in the air, then they have to pull you from space, from the air, from your house. And how you get up there is just gut-wrenching. It's a loud, growling, whipping sound in your head. Your body's paralyzed. You're screaming inside because you can't move. You can't open your eyes, and you're yelling to yourself inside, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. You feel this acceleration like you're going down a roller coaster, only 100 times faster. You black out. The next thing you know, you're there. And that's where I found myself.
All right, Jim.
There now.
Right. I've got you. All right. Now, you said there's an easy way and a hard way. I mean, that sounds like a cop question. If you're going to get taken to jail, most cops will say, look, we can do this the easy way, or we can do it the hard way. I mean, was it like that?
Well, actually, it's the technology. You picture it's a soft technology that's used, and there's a hard technology not meant to hurt you. It's just meaning that if let's say they land somewhere and they're coming to your house, they come and escort you, and you're walking actually to the craft, and you go on board, and then the scenario begins. So they're on the ground. So that's what I call the easy way. The hard way is this gut-wrenching feeling you get when they're in flight, and they're whizzing by your place, and they literally take you from your home or your car, wherever you may be, into their craft. And that technology is just they're hauling butt, and they're pulling you on board. And so, but they have you in a paralyzed state, and your eyes are closed, you can't see. It's just a gut-wrenching feeling, and the next thing you know, you're there. And then that's what happened the first time, and I didn't even know what there was. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know it was aliens. I found myself in this room. I was sitting on a bench-like thing.
All right, I'll tell you what. Hold on, Jim. Hold on. We're going to do a real quick break, so hold it right where you are. We'll get this taken care of, and it sounds like we're sort of moving into a different chapter, so we'll pick up on all this in a moment. This is Dark Matter, raging, and I mean raging, in the nighttime. I'm Art Bell.
The Sirius XM Master Switch has been thrown. Skynet is active. Call now before a city you care about disappears behind the Terminator. Save them now by calling 855-REAL-UFO. That's 855-732-5836.
This is Dark Matter. Don't call yet. It's not time yet. God, I love that one. I really do. Before a city you care about disappears behind the Terminator. Sounds terrible, but when you dissect it, it's not so bad. Terminator, comes and goes all the time. It's just the horizon if you actually look it up. All right, back now to Australia, all the way down near Perth, Australia, for Jim Sparks. And Jim, the wonderful thing about Dark Matter is that now we've got about 30 minutes before we have any other break. We can just rock and roll.
All right.
So, continue, pick up where you were, because it was beginning to get a little wild.
Yeah, again, I'm going through years 1 through 6, and, the first 6 years, and they were traumatic, and they were a bit negative because I didn't have a frame of reference. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know who they were. And that's why I started off explaining in the beginning that how different they are. And, I wrote that book. I wrote a book, The Keepers.
Right.
And I put all of this in, graphic, in all detail, committed to memory. So there's a lot more detail in there.
Sure.
And, anyway, I did something special for your listeners, Art. And so if they go onto my website, it's Jim-Sparks or jim-sparks.com.
All right.
And then, all they got to do is see something with your name. They'll know what it means. And, I put something special for them, for your listeners.
You mean like a special deal?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
So, yeah. And anyway, in the beginning, again, this is how I found myself on board for the first time, sitting on a bench, and then in front of me was a table with a screen on it. I was paralyzed all completely through my body. The only thing that could move was my head up and down. And I had my right arm leaning on the table. I could move my right forefinger. And then in front of me was a wall, and it had a screen on that wall. So I call it a wall screen. I call the thing in front of me now a table screen. And that's where I was. So everything was paralyzed, no vocal cords. My head to go up and down, no peripheral vision, and my right hand on this machine, which I didn't know was a teaching machine at the time. And anyway, so you can imagine finding yourself there. You're in a room that's it's the light's coming from nowhere, but yet everywhere at the same time. So there's no source, but yet it's emanating from everything.
All right, and one question, sorry to interrupt. It is this, we've got a time lag, so, when you hear my voice, that means I'm trying to say something. To me, Jim, being paralyzed would be all by itself absolutely horrifying, because it's happened a couple times to me in my sleep. I think most people have experienced that. Being paralyzed and conscious is really horrifying, all by itself.
Yes, I know. Yeah, I understand that. And think about it. And here you are conscious, and exactly as you said. And I was allowed my vocal cords so I can yell and scream, and I'm yelling and screaming. Who are you? Why am I here? What is this? I don't even know what's going on. And I had no clue. And then here you are in this place. And so, frightened to death, horrified, like you said. And all of a sudden, the letter A, the block letter A for our alphabet comes up on this wall screen. What's this A? And next to it was a symbol. And then this telepathic voice, which is the first voice I heard, said, trace the symbol for the letter A. And, again, who are you? Why are you doing this? And, I didn't want to do it. And when I would move my right forefinger, it would make a tracing on the screen in front of me. And
so they allowed you to be unparalyzed enough to move a finger.
Yeah, that's it. And my head up and down. So I can look at this table in front of me, and I can look up at the screen. And that was it. And, I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to cooperate with them. I yelled and screamed and did everything. I didn't know what they were.
Sure.
And I realized that, that it was constant pressure on their part. They just would make me uncomfortable until I did it. So I had to stay like that. So that was a frightening thing. And I said at the beginning, this is going to sound pretty negative, and it was, but as it turned out, it evolved into something special. But in the meantime, once I started sketching that letter, then they would let me go home, and I would find myself at home. And, the way I left. And now you can imagine what a mess that was and what a mess it made me. I was telling friends about it. They didn't understand. My wife wasn't couldn't understand what was going on. family. What are you trying to say? And
Sure.
so.
All right, here's a question. When they had you trace the letter A next to a symbol, you said, did it dawn on you right away that this was a teaching moment on their part? Because that probably would tend to relax you a little. I mean, it's like they're not going to cut out your liver or do rip out your heart for a sample or something. They're trying to teach you. At least that's a lesser threat than it could have been.
Oh, well, that's something that ended up being, there's no doubt about it, was definitely to teach. In fact, and you got it right. In the beginning, though, I didn't know what it was. I was just more scared of where I was at that time. And, and so even when I got back home, I couldn't cope. It was hard for me to cope. So it was hard for me to go back to business. It was hard for me to, function normally. I was just afraid of them. And, they were doing this to me 2-3 times a week. Every week in those first few months. And so, as you imagine, I tried to get away from them, as feeble as it was at the time. I would get in my car when I would drive. At the time, I was doing business in Texas, and I would drive into Houston, and I would go into a big hotel, and I'd check out a room in the middle thinking they couldn't get me, and I would be abducted. Right. I would drive from state to state.
Oh, boy.
And,
but you know what, Jim? These are things that I would do, too, and I think probably anybody that was faced with this would do their damnedest to get away.
And that's exactly right. You got it on the head. And, so, I mean, there's an antidote I have, they come a godzillion miles to get here and pull people, and I'm going to drive a few hundred miles and think I'm going to escape. So,
Yeah.
And nonetheless, that was hard. And so there were, and they did different kind of, during the course of it, there was emotional experiments. There was different kind of things that took place in these abduction scenarios. And, I would scream, why me? And they would never answer any questions. And, after several months of this, and this alphabet, by the way, I call it an alphabet. It started with the A, like you said, and then it went to B. And I remember at the time, I literally cried, oh my God, because it took me so long to get to A. What are we going to do, the whole alphabet? And as it turned out, every time they pulled me, now it's a B, and now it's a C, and there's a symbol for it, and I had to be precise with it. And if I was a bad student, they'd keep me there. Sometimes they would just leave me alone. I got to start seeing them. They were finally getting in my view. And that's where I saw the little worker beings, and that's where I saw the grays. That's how I knew they were aliens, but they weren't communicating with me. They weren't nice to me. And so, it's like I felt like I was in in the proverbial school where you put the dunce hat at and you sit in the corner. Right. And so if I wouldn't cooperate, they just ignored me and walked out.
All right. So basically, Jim, they made you learn their whole alphabet. Did you get to the point where you had their whole alphabet down? And if so, what did that do? Did that precipitate communication with them? In other words, once you had their whole alphabet down, if you did, what did you do with it?
Yeah, well, it went from all the way from A to no Z's or no Q's, and then it went into a number system from 1 to 6. So they had a 6-based number system, and so that again, I didn't know what the purpose of it was. It didn't make sense to me. And so now this is going on. I know, these abductions are going on. I'm losing weight. I'm not coping well, and it was just a bad scene in those early months, and then that led to several years. But
if I might ask, Jim, how at this point? I mean, you're being abducted again and again and again and again. How did your wife handle it? Did you stop talking about it, or did you keep telling her, or what?
Well, that's when I finally got up one day. And I looked at myself in the mirror because nobody believed me at that time, and it's a whole different world today. But anyway, no one believed me, and couldn't blame them really. And so I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, "Man, you look terrible. You're losing weight. You're not sleeping. These things aren't going to stop." So I decided I'm just going to keep my mouth shut, and if I don't talk about it, nobody thinks it's weird. And I kept my mouth shut, and I kept this stuff to myself right on for 6 years, going through this alphabet thing. And they did emotional experiments while I was there. They did medical experiments in the sense where they didn't hurt me medically. They did, intellectual experiments, and then, learning the alphabet at the same time. And, Yet, I find myself in different places over there, but yet still paralyzed, and they wouldn't answer why me, and it's good to take note of the fact that this alphabet is something, and I hated them, I loathed them, and I think that's why so much of it was committed to memory, and I think they got to see me different from as other abductees, because other abductees, they take the memory away and bring them back.
All right, well, I have a question. It may or may not make sense, but here it comes. Why were they teaching you their alphabet if they had the ability to communicate with you directly mentally?
Okay, well, here it goes. Once the alphabet and the number system was down, I call it pulled. When I say abducted, I use the terminology pulled, meaning from point A to point B. So when I got pulled one particular evening, and there I was sitting on a bench, and there I was with the alphabet, and out of nowhere, because they've never done this before, came some normal text lettering with 50 pages, like on that wall screen, one page at a time, approximately 30, right close to 50 pages. And it was about a story that in regular block lettering that everybody can read, when you get anything from that newspaper print. And it was a story about a friend of mine named Jerry. And Jerry, they went page after page. They went through his entire life, from a child to where he went to school, who he dated, who he married. And I'm reading this thing right up on through the present, and it looked like it was even going a little bit into the future. Now, after I read these pages, because it was something I can read, I yelled and screamed, "What are you doing?" And of course, I made up every cuss word you can think of for them, and new ones that probably no one ever heard at that time. And why are you doing this? And then the most astounding thing took place that started the transformation. And it goes back to knowing you're learning something, as you mentioned earlier. The next page that came up, instead of being in our text, it came in, or our text, it came in their symbols, but it was about a half a page, not even a half a page. And every symbol that I read, I knew the symbols from that. I could read the whole story and understand the whole story in a matter of just a couple of minutes, or less than that, maybe, less than a minute. Here's the whole story. So they took 50 pages of text, compressed it into these symbols, and now you can get the whole story in detail, in graphic detail, in less than a minute.
All right, I have another question.
I went, oh.
All right, yep, okay, but I've got another question. I don't get it. If they were giving you their alphabet and number sequences, okay, but how were you able to read their symbols and have, in other words, our alphabet, for example, is used to make up words. And so when you learn the alphabet, you can put sounds together, but that doesn't add up to understanding necessarily. So as you read their symbols, how did you have an understanding of what you were reading?
It just worked that way with the brain. And with them being there, it worked that way with the brain, reviewing everything, and it's pieced together in a way from our alphabet to their symbolism, and the symbols equated to our alphabet. But it's almost like shorthand, but for some reason the brain picks it up right away, and that's just something they're able to do. Now, it's even better than that. Just to show you, the walls were blank, and one of them held up something the size of a 50-cent coin and flashed it in front of my face.
Right.
Just for a second, I had something scribbled on it, symbol scribbled, and then flashed it in front of my face, and I got the whole story in less than a second. And so the best way for me to describe, so this is how their minds work, and it was a way to relate to me, faster ways to communicate. So it bypasses a lot of the things that we have to do. We're all physical. The eyes have to see it. It has to go in through the brain, vortex, or however that works. I'm not a medical student, but it goes into your brain and translates into language, and the brain seeing the language and translates it into something you can understand. But it bypasses all that stuff, and the symbols go right to the brain with a story. So it's really advanced. And it's a way of getting a lot of information in a quick time. So the best way I can describe that is like if you can name any movie. Think of any movie you want to. Can you come up with the name of any movie? It doesn't matter what it is.
World War Z.
Okay, World War Z. Everything about that movie, when we hear about a movie that we've seen before, we know it. We know the emotions behind the movie. We know the storyline. We know who the actors are. We knew what everything was going through. So that entire movie, since you've seen it, is in there in your mind, right? The feeling
Yes,
of
that is.
everything.
Yes.
Okay. Now they can flash a symbol, and you can get a 2-hour movie, but it wouldn't be a movie. They can take a 2-hour event and put it in front of you quickly, and you'll have the whole movie over a movie, which they don't do movies, but any kind of an event in your mind. So that was a very positive thing. So that was something that I noticed for us down the road. And that's something that took, years of me resisting them in the beginning and trying to run away from them to even learn anything. So I couldn't have been a worse pupil because I didn't want anything to do with them. In fact, I was hell-bent on, I actually wanted to kill one. If I had the opportunity to, which I did, and and then you'll see.
Trust me, I understand the feeling. It is such a violation of any human being to be abducted like that. That feelings of wanting to kill. Oh yes, I understand that very well indeed, Jim.
Well, and that was it. So even though that alphabet was something that was amazing to me. It wasn't enough at that time for me to not like them. I still didn't like them. But one thing started leading to another. But I still had that in me to want to take them down. So now here's how wild it got in those years. That they would come into the house, literally, using their technology and their science. And before they would pull me or abduct me, they would actually come into the house and make themselves, in a sense, at home. And I'm not being silly. I mean, they would look at things in the house, like what demons are using or whatever. And that's how crazy this is. It's like a movie. You're sitting there, I'm sitting in my armchair, and here's this thing walking around looking at stuff. So with that in mind, before I would be escorted, because now I'm completely conscious, but yet I'm under their control. When they attack me, I'm partially paralyzed. I got a little better to take me from point A to point B, which is on board, but not always the same way. Sometimes I would black out and I would find myself there, but more or less what I'm saying, there were times that they would come to the house, inside the house. And so I figured now this is my chance because I finally got up the guts to say, I'm gonna kill an alien. And so then I can tell you how I decided to do it. And maybe you would do the same thing. Which was kind of wild. The thing I did was, knowing that they were going to come into the house from time to time, I wanted to be ready for them. So I went to the gun store and bought a .357 Magnum.
Oh.
And yeah, and so now I got a pistol. And then I got mustered up the courage to shoot them. So I went to the bottle shop and I bought myself I think it was a vodka or something. And so that I brought it back home, and I put the bottle to the left on the end table, and to the right on the end table was the pistol, and I sat in the armchair, and I said, when one comes in, I'm going to shoot him. And I would take, a little gulp of the vodka just to settle my nerves and to have the courage.
How much courage did you get?
Well, enough just to take it, burn the stomach there a little bit. Every few minutes for a while. But, but it did work because I didn't have any kind of because I don't want to kill anything. You want to kill them, but, the actual thought of doing something is one thing, and actually the actual physical, bringing yourself to something like that is another, which I'm about to go over. Because when they came in, now here I am on the chair, and they got me at the right time. I took my few sips of the alcohol, and I did have the pistol ready. And one of them was walking into the living room, and then he walked right in front of me. And had no fear or didn't show anything because here's this gun sitting there, didn't care. And then he turns his back on me, and he's looking at the television set. Now his back and his head is turned to me. And so I pick up the pistol, and I take it, and I point it right directly to the back of his head. It was only a couple of feet away. And then I got my finger on the trigger, and I yelled something at him, which was, I said, you are so damn stupid. You come thousands of miles with all this high technology, and you don't even know how to turn on a television set. And I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. And I had my finger on the trigger. and I couldn't pull it. I just couldn't bring myself to pulling it after all those years of them not being nice to me and everything.
Oh, no, wait a minute. You say you couldn't pull the trigger. Do you mean you emotionally couldn't pull it, or you were paralyzed and couldn't pull it?
Emotionally. Because I'm at home, I can move around, because it got silly when I was at home, being paralyzed on board in a sense, because they knew nobody believed me, and I wasn't talking to anybody, and it's just something I had to deal with. And I didn't kill him, but the telepathic voice says, he said to me telepathically, he said, we know, the words were exactly, we know you're not a killer, and you're not. We know you're not a killer, and you're not. And quite frankly, I wept, and then I got pulled. But this is something that started changing things, because now I understand the reason for this alphabet. Now I realize I can't kill them, and what I didn't know was going to happen here is now we got a bond or a trust is building. It took them 6 years to get to this point to trust me, to start to trust me, and even in that way. And so,
Okay, listen, buddy, I hear you. They would have, you said they had no fear. And if, in fact, they were able to read your mind, then they did, in fact, know that you were not a killer, that you could not bring yourself to kill, even though you'd prepped to do it and had everything you needed, including a little liquid courage, that you weren't going to kill anybody at all. So, of course, they had no fear. Makes sense.
Yeah, and so then that's what now I still don't know really it's leading to something. In fact, I'm really I'm just down. It was depressed me because I was going to do it and I couldn't do it. We're just why are they here? Well, why me? And all of this. And now things I started getting answers. So answers now started occurring. So the next time I got pulled. They would never answer any of my questions. No matter what, I would never get an answer to any question. And I later learned that they just wouldn't go anyway. And I was so frustrated on one abduction, that abduction afterward, I was said, why me? Why me? Why me?
Right.
What's making me different from anybody else? And I got a holographic, something that looked like a hologram came up basically in thin air on board, when I was sitting in front of the wall screen, because here I am I can move my head up and down stage still. I was still paralyzed. And I saw a scene of, it was a World War II scene. And in that World War II scene, I could see a face that looked like mine. It was a soldier, and anyway, it looked like actually what it was it was two officers. It looked like a German officer and an Italian officer. So my bloodline is Italian, but I mean I've been third generation, whatever, second generation, American. And nonetheless, it was they were doing something together, but the face on that soldier or that officer was a family member. And anyway, it kind of made sense to me to look at that because my father told me, he died in his right at 90, but he told me back, before World War II that. Because he was working and living in Italy and back in the United States at the time, he said that, before, the war and this war was coming, that they had no choice. So some of them had to fight for the Axis power. Right. And then we had the rest of my family fighting here for us. So, that's how that went. I know you know what I'm talking about. Make a long story short.
I do. Were you actually looking at one of your relatives?
Yes, that's what I was looking at. Here's the message, because the next one that comes up is a turn of the century where there's, the late 1800s, early 1900s, the Industrial Revolution in the United States. There's a ribbon cutting ceremony, and then I got another that looks like a relative. And what they were saying is that because I was saying why me, they track family lines. They genetically track family lines for thousands of years, and these things kept coming out. One at a time. It went back to the Roman period, and it went back, even BC. I mean, well before that. So, one after the other, and that was their answer. So I got an answer to why me, which, was a remarkable thing because now...
Okay, so the answer was, if I've got it straight, Jim, that it was you because you are simply the current one in the long line that they've been following in your lineage, yes?
That's exactly it.
Okay, hold on where you are. We're going to do a break here, a quick break, and we'll be right back. Jim Sparks.
And with that, we will leave Dark Matter with Art Bell. And Jim starts from October 15th, 2013 for tonight. We will pick up with them tomorrow night to continue their story. As for that will draw us to a close here today on From Day One. As always, please like, share, and subscribe. Get us to those 50,000 views, 1,000 subscribers. So Moxie sends those nice red packages over we can send to you guys to watch. And YouTube puts us on the algorithms. CoinBase, Ibotta, GG, you know the drill. So, as we have this final fight, until next time, like, share, and subscribe. Be kind to one another. And release the Krakens as we march along here from Day One. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Enjoy your night's rest.